Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Leverett Ball Show. And on this episode, I am joined by Shawne Merriman. And football fans, you know this guy well. He was the Defensive Rookie of the Year in the NFL and also a multiple time Pro Bowler. And Shawne, welcome. How are you?
I'm good, my man. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. And it's funny, Shawne, you're a fellow Maryland guy. I grew up in Baltimore. I've been living in Boston for the last 13 years or so, but you grew up in Maryland and then you stayed local and played your college football at University of Maryland. I like to ask guests about things kind of in the order that they happen. So backtracking to your time coming out of high school and playing at University of Maryland, I mean, I assume that there were schools all over the country that wanted you. What went into the decision to stay local for your college football?
It's funny because when I came out of Maryland, the PG County, grew up in Prince George's County. All the big name guys when they got all the scholarship offers, they left. They went to Florida State, they went to Miami, they went to Ohio State, and so they all left. And so me, I was like, all right, cool. I'm the Raiders' #1 player coming out of DC, Maryland, Virginia area. Like I wanted to be the first one to stay home. And, after that happened, like Vernon Davis and some of the bigger names in the area, they all stayed home. And so it worked. But we're 20 minutes from the school. And so I'm like, why would I go anywhere else? And, they got a good program coming in. The head coach Ralph Friesen was coming in. And how I grew up, man, I just wanted to we grew up poor. We grew up with nothing, and so I wanted to stay home because I had so much support from that DMV area. Like, there was no other options for me to go anywhere else. In fact, I didn't even take a visit. I committed as a junior. I never even took a visit to another school because I knew where I wanted to go.
Wow. Wow, that's something. Didn't even take a visit elsewhere. So you were all in on University of Maryland. And it's funny, your nickname Lights Out, that actually started during your high school days in Maryland. That wasn't a nickname they gave you once you got to the NFL. You actually knocked out four guys in the same high school game. I mean, was there, were they talking extra shit to you, or was it just like kinda just happened randomly, or how did that all come about?
It's crazy because at the time you don't really. First of all, this was a time it was applauded, right? When you knocking guys out, like you got to
Yeah.
hit on the head and hit on the back because it was applauded. Now it's a little bit frowned upon, but um, yeah, man, I was in the zone, man. I was in the on a roll, and I didn't plan it. But after the game, about 20 students came right up to me and said, "You knocked these kids' lights out," and I was like, "Yeah, you know what? Call me lights out." And that name just stuck with me from high school, college, all the way through the pros.
Wow, that's something. Yeah, it's funny because I played rugby in college, and I once knocked a guy's tooth out. I was hoping people would start calling me the dentist after that. No one ever called me that, so I didn't get a cool nickname out of it myself. But then, obviously played at Maryland, first round pick by the Chargers, dominated your rookie year, defensive rookie of the year in the NFL. But we talked about your Maryland background growing up there playing at Maryland. I
Yeah.
mean, did the Ravens have interest in you, when you entered the draft?
Yeah, I remember talking to the Ravens, but I also talked to the Redskins then, now Commanders. I actually took a visit to the Commanders. And I was like, this would be crazy if I went to University of Maryland and then got drafted. I think they had the ninth pick overall. I ended up going 12 to San Diego. But I said, man, if they draft me, I mean, I went to college in Maryland and I stayed home and played in Maryland. So that would have been cool. But also, too, man, I've never been to the West Coast. So when I took my visit to San Diego and we're kind of flying in over the Pacific Ocean, I'm like, dude, this would be a nice spot. This would be a nice spot to be. And then too, they just came off of a really good year. They just came off a really good year. So they had Drew Brees was starting quarterback when I came in, LaDainian Tomlinson, like Lorenzo Neal, Antonio Gates, Phillip Rivers. I mean, they were stacked. And so for me, I was like, man, this would be really, really cool to come. And that's what happened. The Cowboys had the 11th pick. And then the Chargers had 12th. So I was either going to go to the Cowboys or the Chargers. And I was good with either one, man. But after taking my visit to San Diego, I was like, you know what? This would be a really, really nice landing spot here.
I will say though, imagine, you and Ray Lewis on the same
Mm.
defense together. That would have been terrifying. I think half the offensive players in that division would have retired if you and Ray had been playing together. But
We still yeah, so it's funny you say that because we still talk about it.
yeah,
We still talk about it when I just seen him a couple days ago, and, that would have been that would have been scary, and then Ray was a mentor so of mine, from, like, college on, and so we already had a relationship, so if that happened, I mean, that probably been one of the scariest things in football, for sure.
no doubt. And they also had Suggs playing linebacker for them, who also won Defensive
Yeah.
Player of the Year. The three of you on the same defense, that would have been the best linebacking group in the history of the NFL, pretty much. That would have been nuts.
Dude, well, somebody been walking out of there, in a lot of trouble. I mean, you got you got guys that's head hunting out there for 4 quarters. I mean, that's the last thing an offense wanna see.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. But, you know, obviously you ended up getting drafted by the Chargers. And your rookie year, you were NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year, but you had a contract dispute with the team when you were drafted. So,
Yeah.
you got to the team, it was roughly like 2 weeks before the first game. So after not having time in training camp to kind of learn the defense and get acclimated, how are you able to have such a dominant season?
Dude, let me tell you, so, obviously, the contracts are not what they were now, right? So you see less holdouts because the contracts are standard. You get drafted a certain pick. Mine was more of like an injury clause, so that's why I held out, but those are gone now. I showed up a couple weeks before the first game, and the first 4 weeks, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. The coaches had to line me up, and then, finally, the coaches took me in a room, and they said, "This what we want you to do. We want you to see ball, go ball." And I said, "Okay, what does that mean?" They said, "We'll line you up, and when you see the ball, go to it." That was my playbook for the first 4 weeks of the season.
Wow.
That was it. They lined me up, and they said, "We want you to go make a play." And then somewhere in the middle of the season, I started feeling comfortable, I understood what was going on, and then I just took off from that. I mean, it was, I had a big game against Peyton Manning. I had, I think 3 or 4 sacks against Peyton Manning, and that really put me on the map.
100%, 100%. And I mean, you mentioned the sacks against Peyton Manning. When you play, super high profile guys like Manning or Brady, I mean, was there that added incentive to go get them?
Hell yeah. I mean, like, because for me, and I was told this by LeVar Arrington, when I was in high school to play linebacker for out of Penn State, play for linebacker for the then Redskins. He said, if you want to be great, you got to have great games against great quarterbacks. So I remember that from high school. And so every time we had Peyton Manning, we had, Tom Brady, we had, Ben Roethlisberger. You look at all those games, I had at least one sack, sometimes up to three. So I just knew that in order to have sacks against those guys, you're going to be mentioned up there. Mind you, look at this. 20 years from now, when they're playing their highlights or NFL films, I'm gonna be on all them shits. Like I'm gonna be in every one of them. So I think that's pretty cool, man, because those guys were such great players.
It's interesting also because the rules in the NFL have changed as far as how rough you can be with quarterbacks. Obviously, your rookie year, when you got those sacks against Peyton Manning, you were allowed to be a lot more violent with QBs. And it's funny because, like, with Tom Brady, there are clips of him really early in his career getting leveled. But, like, I remember at the end of his career when he was with the Buccaneers, you pretty much weren't allowed to touch him. And I mean, what are your thoughts on, and it's not just with like, being less rough with quarterbacks, but they've eliminated hip drop tackles and hitting receivers and things like that. What are your thoughts on the rule changes in football?
I think that I think the NFL has done a great job at like protecting guys because remember Heinz Ward. Heinz
Yeah.
Ward will come and crack back block you and break your damn jaw. Like he was guaranteed going to hurt something crack back. So they took those things out. A lot of the helmet to helmet now. I, I'm in the middle with that because you got a half a second to make a decision, right? So
Right.
some of those hits, what are you going to do? You can't get your head out the way, and your helmet is going to make contact because it's connected to your damn neck, right? Like you can't just move your head out the way and have your body go into another place. So, um, and also too, if you talk to a lot of players, most guys would rather be hit above the waist.
Yeah.
than to the knee, right? Because we've seen some of the catastrophic knee injuries that's happened over the time period, and I think that most guys would rather be hit up top than they are taking their legs out.
Gotcha, gotcha. And it's interesting because different NFL guys I've talked to have had different opinions. Some guys, they say some of the new rules make it safer. There's some guys who are traditional who hate some of the new rules. You mentioned also though with helmet to helmet. I saw an interview with Ray Lewis where he said that you can't control a rocket once it's launched. And so he doesn't consider helmet to helmet dirty. Is that kind of what you're mentioning as far as like the split second decisions where once you're kind of in the moment, it's harder to kinda back off a little bit?
It's harder for a lot of the older guys
Yeah.
because we were taught to, basically knock you out, and that's using your helmet. And so, and it also gets you on the ground by any means necessary, right? Like, so however I gotta get you on the ground, and I'm gonna do it. And so now that part of it's taken out. But again, I'm not super old school when it comes to like you hear a lot of the older guys say something on the lines of, well, back in the day when we had the leather helmets, we used to. I'm like, get your old asses out of here. Well, I'm not one of those, but I do think that football is still football. It's still a violent sport, and there's nothing you can do about that. You get what I mean? That's why people love. That's why it's America's game. People love the violence of it, whether they want to publicly admit it or not. And the more violent you're able to play the game for 4 quarters, you get applauded for. You get paid for it, and so yeah, man, it's just tough to see some of the fines and penalties because I'm thinking like, first of all, I'll be playing for free. Like, there's no way I can play nowadays. I would just write my damn check right over to the NFL and be out. But I think it's just hard to make that split second decision and still have love and passion for the game.
That makes a lot of sense, but, also, as far as your time with the Chargers, I mean, you referenced some of the guys you play with. I mean, they had some legendary guys on that Chargers team, guys like LaDainian Tomlinson, Antonio Gates, Philip Rivers, Lorenzo Neal. I mean, when you first got there, were you starstruck at all by all the talent, or were you just kinda ready?
I was ready, but also too, I did look. It was one point in time my rookie year. I looked across the way and like LT's locker right there, and Antonio Gates' locker is right there. Phillips' locker's right there. Lorenzo Neal, who I watched growing up, locker's right there. So I did have that moment. Um, Man, I was so pissed off. Like by the time I got there, because the holdout and everybody saying that, just talking in the media, and I'm like, dude, I want to be there. It's not like I don't want to be there, but also this contract situation. So I was excited getting in the building and seeing LT and everybody else, but I was also like kind of pissed off because, I saw what was being said in the media before I got there. And I'm like, dude, you have no idea how much I love this game of football. And I want to be there. Um, but yeah, man, even now, when I got a 15-year-old son, my son actually just transferred to St. Francis in high school in Baltimore. So I get a chance to talk to him now. My son plays quarterback, Justin Merriman. And so now, I talked to him about some of the guys I played with. I mean, I played with Phillip Rivers, and my son plays quarterback. So being able to talk to him about some of the characteristics and traits that like Philip had during his time, um, is pretty cool, man. Like kind of pass down all the stuff I've learned being around them. Really.
Wow, that's something, and it's interesting because like Deion Sanders, his son is a quarterback. Is that? I guess that's the thing. If you're a stud defensive player in the NFL, you have a son who's a quarterback. I guess that's the the trend now. But also I mentioned you won Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year. You made 3 straight Pro Bowls when you entered the league, but then you dealt with some injuries,
Yep.
and some adversity, and then after the Chargers, you wrapped up your career with the Bills, but what was that like after having so much early success to be humbled a little bit and deal with injuries, and how did you kinda get through that?
It was tough, man, because when you're playing at the level that I was playing at, and I've always played at, and when you start having injuries and you can't seem to get healthy, you can't figure out. You're like, why in the hell, the left something on the left side hurts, and then you something on the right hurts, right? I had the big knee surgery on my left knee, which I came back fine from, but I was compensating for the right side, and I tore my Achilles. And so I was fine. I actually came back fine from the knee injury. It was my Achilles that really, kind of put me at that level where I wasn't the same player anymore. So by the time I got to Buffalo, I ended up getting surgery to my Achilles. I played a couple more years, but it was never the same. Right, so I couldn't go out, I couldn't explode anymore, I couldn't take over games and make those big plays consistently. I was good for a couple big plays a game, but I couldn't do it every quarter. My body just would not let me go out and do the things I wanted, for a game. So that was probably the toughest time, especially knowing where you used to play at. Now you watch a film and you're trying to figure out like, damn, I would have made this play a couple years ago, and so that was tough.
When you moved out of football, I've had a lot of NFL guys I've met who have told me that it just like messed with their head when they first left the NFL, and it was such a strange transition for them. What was it like for you when you decided to move on from the game?
It was actually easier, and because I already heard how bad the transition was for a lot of guys,
Mhm.
and, I've been around combat sports where I was training with some of the best fighters in the world, Randy Couture and Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz. I was in the gym when Tyron Woodley was just first coming in there, and, when I stopped playing football, like, I started training more with some of the MMA guys, and then, I was broadcasting at NFL Network. And so I had plenty of things to do, but again, that regimen is gone, right? And so once that regimen is gone, you're trying to figure out like, oh damn, I don't have mandatory meetings anymore. I don't hear a whistle blowing, a coach being here, or a team bus to jump on. So I think that's where most guys struggle trying to find that next phase, right? It's hard. It's like somebody else who worked 30, 40 years, they retire and they've been getting up in the morning at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. for 30 years. And now that's gone. So it's just, you just got to figure out what that next phase is and what gets you excited to get out of bed in the morning.
100%, 100%. And, also, I know you've done some things in the MMA world and, you have some business ventures maybe you're excited to announce further down the road. But, what can you tell fans about, the different things you've been involved in post playing career?
Yeah, man, I founded Lights Out Extreme Fighting, MMA promotion. And, we last year, I think we sent more fighters to the UFC last year than anybody in the sport, or close to it. I think there's a couple other promotions that have as well. But yeah, man, we had signed a ESPN Latin America deal back in December. Um, and we were cranking. I mean, we are just moving as fast. And two, I'll tell you, man, I'm fortunate because I got a chance to play in the NFL. So I seen things done, at least on a production level, at a big scale. So by the time I start building my own, it's like, well, dude, it's not like walking out to Sunday night football. It's nothing like Monday Night Football, and you see those cameras and the sky cameras and the smoke and it's the biggest production you can possibly get, right? So
Yeah.
I had that same mindset whenever I build things is I seen it done at a big scale and I can do this. And so that's what I did. And so now, and we do production for other companies too. I have a production company we do a lot of other work for. But yeah, man, just live sports. Live sports and media has just been really is my life, man. It's really um there's very few many things that get you out of the bed like it did with football, right? Running out there to 70 plus thousand people screaming, millions of people watching. And so you have to find something that makes you feel the same way that you did when you were playing football. And that for me was live sports and media, man. That's really all I do. That's 90% of my day consists of in the gym.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I know also, you did, in addition to founding Lights Out, you also did a little bit of MMA fighting yourself. Was there ever a point in time when you thought that maybe, rather than running an operation, that you'd have a long-term career, as maybe a UFC fighter?
Yeah. I mean, in fact, I think around 2016 or 2017, I was supposed to I was going to have a sign with Bellator. I would have a fight with Bellator in 2016, 2017, I believe. And that didn't happen. Things happen in a certain way because Bellator is a great organization. But when I launched my own in 2019, into 2019, I was looking at fighting on my own promotion, you know. But again, I try to tell a lot of former athletes if you're not consistently training and you're not in the gym and you have real sparring matches, which I didn't have the time to do, like don't do it. Because fighting is not one of those sports where you go try it out, right? You're not going to play a pickup game at LA Fitness. You're not going to play a flag football game or going to try out football. Like you got somebody across from you that's trying to do real damage and real harm. So if you're not all in, don't do it.
Yeah, I mean, and you make a great point. I mean, maybe if you lose in one-on-one basketball, you get dunked on, it's humiliating. If you lose in fighting, you actually get the crap beaten out of you. So it's not only humiliating, but physically painful. So, yeah, I guess if you have no idea how to fight, don't step in there.
No, no, we've seen some former athletes get in there and try. This whole thing is going back and forth with Jake Paul and Le'Veon. Like that's a fight I want to see. I spent a lot of my post career matchmaking and putting fights together and promoting and everything else. Like I think that people want to see that.
100%. That was actually the next thing I was gonna ask you about fighting is now they have the celebrity fights and the influencer boxing matches and influencer MMA fights. Now, and the Paul brothers are huge in that, both of them. Now, Logan Paul recently said something which I don't really believe, but he said that he could beat any NFL player in a fight. At one point, he said, word for word, I would throttle Miles Garrett. I mean, Miles Garrett could probably eat him. I don't think I believe him. But let's say if Logan Paul thinks he could fight any NFL player. I mean, you're a former NFL player and have fighting experience. I mean, is it safe to say that you would beat Logan Paul's ass?
Yeah, but I wouldn't even throw it out there because I think he should know that, and most people should know.
Yeah,
That's why I didn't call guys out like me. Plus, I'm 40, so he is better, I think, for him to fight a Le'Veon Bell, right? Younger, there's been training, is looking for a fight. But yeah, shit, man. I mean, for me, it's a fight. Like I still spar, I still train, I feel great. Um, if that was a possibility, I would do it in a second. I just don't. I think he wants a fight that he has upper hand on. I mean, he's fighting guys like Floyd that he probably weighs what more than 40 or 50 pounds more than he does. Um, but I don't know if he really wants a fight.
yeah,
That's my thing. I think it's great for entertainment.
yeah,
And I think it's great for entertainment. I think that people need to separate entertainment from actual combat sports, real fighting, right?
yeah.
And so I think for the sport on the entertainment side is great that he's calling people out. The NFL, it got picked up everywhere, did exactly what he wanted to do. So I think it's great promotion. But again, I don't throw my name in that hat because that's light work for me.
Yeah, and so I guess, your future doesn't involve, fighting celebrities. Like you don't have an upcoming fight against like Justin Bieber or anyone. You're gonna stick to what you're currently doing. But Shawne, obviously I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today. And before we wrap things up, for any big fans of yours, where can they follow you on social media? And also how can they keep up with lights out extreme fighting?
Yeah, at Shawne Merriman across all social media platforms, and then at Lights Out XF. Hopefully, having some really, really good news at some point in time coming up, and get back to work, man. I think we have one of the fastest growing promotions in the world, and I want to continue to do that.
Once again, Shawne, thank you for your time today. And everyone, you've been listening to the Leverett Ball Show. Thanks for tuning in.